Have you ever watched a movie and when it was over, you didn't dislike it, but you also weren't sure if you liked it? You just felt indifferent? You probably have, but can you think of a specific example? If you have one in mind, it's probably a movie you've seen somewhat recently, because a movie that fails to be moving will probably fail to be memorable. For me personally, one film to pull off the rare combination of being both unmoving and unforgettable was a film I saw over a decade ago called Lars and the Real Girl. It starred Ryan Gosling as a socially awkward 30-something. His brother and sister-in-law hope for him to find a woman who would presumably help him to settle into a more socially normal lifestyle. Finding a girlfriend seemed to be less of a priority to Gosling's character until one day he informs his brother and sister-in-law that he has a new girlfriend. They happily encourage him to bring her over. He does. The only problem is she's not a real girl. She's a dressed-up sex doll. And mind you, this isn't a traditional comedy. It mostly plays out as a drama. Naturally, the brother and sister-in-law become very worried. They thought he was odd before, but now he's gone off the deep end. They schedule an appointment with a psychiatrist. After meeting with Gosling, the psychiatrist tells the brother and sister-in-law that Gosling hasn't lost his mind, which initially sounds like good news, but in a way it's even more troubling. Why would a sane person act so irrationally? Was it all a stunt? Not exactly. Just because the psychiatrist was unable to clinically diagnose Gosling's problem doesn't mean that he doesn't have a problem. The psychiatrist saw his behavior as a coping method, an extreme way of addressing his feelings of inadequacy. On some level, Gosling was aware that his behavior was irrational, but still he embraced the fantasy that he concocted because his reality had become too uncomfortable. And to the brother and sister-in-law's surprise, the doctor's recommendation was not to discourage the delusion, but rather to
go along with it.
So they do. They treat Gosling's doll like a member of the family. The rest of their small town starts to notice, and perhaps out of sympathy for Gosling's character, they too start to embrace the doll as if she's a real girl. They go so far as giving her a job at the local mall. Eventually, Gosling becomes more distant to his fake girlfriend, until one night he sees her lying in bed and he freaks out because she's not moving or breathing. Of course, the reason why she's not moving or breathing is because she's not real. But this scene marks Gosling's transition point, as he has finished coping and no longer needs this delusion. And the film ends with him connecting with a real girl. So why recount all of these details from a film that I watched 14 years ago and didn't even really like back then? Because more and more, the world we live in is beginning to resemble the town in that movie. We are feeding into fantasies for sake of political correctness, refusing to discourage delusions, no matter how detrimental the consequences. I recently watched Judah's video on Mike Tyson attacking Boosie for criticizing Dwayne Wade over the Zaya situation, and I remarked on how few public figures were courageous enough to express any criticism of a father and the stepmother sexualizing and exploiting a child. This topic resurfaced on a show I just started watching called Politicking with Jason Whitlock on the Scoon TV YouTube channel. They mentioned that Michelle Obama was scheduled to interview Zaya Wade on her podcast, which has since aired. I'm going to react to all of this in a follow-up video or two. There's a lot to cover. I believe that the trans agenda is the second most destructive agenda being propagated today. And more people are feeding into this agenda, mostly out of political correctness. They don't want to offend those who are perceived to be weak or oppressed. They don't want to seem intolerant or bigoted or hurtful, when, ironically, the most damaging thing you can do to someone suffering from a delusion is to deprive them of the one thing that can set them free. So stay tuned for more videos with more information coming on this topic. And remember to gather facts, gain knowledge, get truth.